Are you questioning your reality? Do you feel gaslighted? It's not you, it's the media. I am Suchitra Vijayan and I'll be joined by Bhakti Sringarpure and Madhuri Shastri to eviscerate the propaganda, set the record straight, and offer much needed moral clarity. Tune in each week. It's not you, it's the media, a podcast by the Polis Project.
Welcome back to It's Not You, It's the Media, a podcast where we unpack how the media shapes, distorts, and often manipulates narratives, leaving us questioning what's real and what's propaganda. My name is Madhuri, and I'm joined, as usual, by Bhakti Sringarpure and Suchitra Vijayan. Hello.
Hey.
So, as we all know, this is a bit of an aside, but the Pantone, the paint brand, releases its color of the year every single year, and 2025's color is called Mocha Mousse. And so that's the color of the year. And I think it's a very fitting way to start this podcast, this episode, which is titled, The Indians Are Coming Again. And in this episode, we are going to basically be talking about all the mocha mousses in Trump's new potential cabinet, with a focus on migration and how the media is shaping narratives on migration. And we're going to focus on the Indians since we are all in the know when it comes to this topic as fellow mousses. Anyway, apologize for the very misleading title. We just want to grab your attention. The Indians are not really coming. We're already here. And oh man, is it a mess? Before we get ranting on Indians and the US immigration policy, we wanted to comment on the last 2 weeks of 2024. Zillions of people across the planet packed their bags and migrated to warmer climes and picked their romance novels and their beach reads and their wine to take a break from politics. And while this was happening, unfortunately, the genocide in Palestine has continued to unfold and is probably worse. As we record this segment, with a focus on migration and how the media is shaping narratives on migration, and we're going to focus on the Indians since we are all in the know when it comes to this topic. As Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, who is the director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital, has been disappeared by the Israeli army after months of Israel besieging the hospital and pounding them. Suchitra, would you like to add more here?
Yeah, as you rightly said, Madhuri, the last 2 weeks has been incredibly devastating in so many ways. Of course, as of now, we do not know where Dr. Abu Safia is. As of today morning, the IDF has released a statement saying that they currently do not have him under detention. And again, what we see is lies after lies. We also saw a propaganda to debunk his work, claiming that he's actually connected to Hamas. And I think some of the things we should really take into account in all of this is that Israel has now made it absolutely okay to target hospitals, which means that this is something that we've been saying over and over again. It's just not about Gaza, but it's a roadmap for other genocides to come. The other thing that the mainstream media completely forgot or failed to report properly is the depth of newborn babies in Gaza. As of last night, we've lost about 6 young babies, like weeks and months old babies to frost. It's just been absolutely devastating in so many ways. The other thing, of course, that happened is the fall of the Assad regime in Syria, which again has received some interesting and mixed media reporting. But of course, for the average Syrian, the end of this regime is being celebrated. But at the same time, what we saw was documentation of what happened in Assad's torture chambers, which are for all purposes called prisons, but torture chambers across. But what is again interesting is CNN's Clarissa Ward staged a prisoner rescue, which became the biggest joke of 2024 because the prisoner she claimed to rescue turned out to be one of Assad's henchmen who tortures people. So he himself is, of course, the other thing that we really do have to account for is Israel has dropped about 85,000 tons of bombs, 591 ton per square mile in Gaza, which is, yeah, again, the point is we have to not only continue talking about Gaza, but look at Gaza as an ecocide, as
Yeah.
something that's going to have devastating effects for the world. But yeah, that's me adding the morbid and depressing content to this
Yeah.
podcast. So I'll let
Not
you guys.
not all morbid. I mean, I do love that Clarissa Ward story. It just
Yeah, it is.
it just makes me laugh so much when I saw it, like this Barbie doll, like a white reporter. She goes there and this like super healthy looking prisoner like jumps up, and then people were analyzing the image because they were like, if he's been starved, if he has been the lack of hygiene, which is very well known, which is a type of torture, that was very much part of the Assad regime. His nails are clean and cut, and
Yes, I saw that.
there's all this sort of. I mean, it's just, man, the shamelessness of the media. And of course, there are days I tell myself, why are we doing this podcast? Is anybody listening? But then I see that stuff happen and I'm like, this is why. Because I just cannot believe what's out there, what's happening. Well, so a horrible, horrible 2024 seems to be behind us, right? Though I did a year-end sort of Substack and offered a very bleak picture of 2025. I'm just an absolute pessimist, though I continue to have practice sort of radical hope and don't want to despair, especially with what's happening in Palestine. It's not something I think we have the luxury to do. But, well, 2025 is here and the picture is already so bleak. I love that Trump and gang are already getting geared up to blow our minds. And only last week, there was the horrible feud that exploded between Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and the great Tam Bram, Vivek Ramaswamy, over the topic of visas and skilled workers and who gets to be a good migrant and a bad migrant. And H-1B visas are bang in the middle of all this. And Suchitra, you called an emergency roundup of our podcast because you wanted us to immediately discuss and debate this. And you're totally right. I mean, we are in the know, Madhuri, as you said before. We have all been through visa processes. Some of us are actually still in the throes of it. And this stuff is no joke. This stuff is dehumanizing. It's horrible. And then when you have Indians who sit at an extremely strange position where once they have the power, once they have the visas and the citizenship, all they can do is truly burn the path for everybody else and make sure nobody else has that privilege and do all these horrible things. I mean, we really are at a horrible, horrible crossroads here. So anyway, but Suchitra, I want you to give a roundup of the MAGA saga, as I like to call it.
The MAGA saga is really like history repeating itself, but repeating itself with the most cruel sense of what a farce or a joke would look like. So it all really starts, at least this segment starts again. This could go back. You could start the story 20 years before, but really it starts with a MAGA Trump supporter called Laura Loomer, who kind of starts berating the appointment of Sriram Krishnan as one of Trump's advisors for AI. Also understand that the issue right now is that this administration, the Trump administration, has seen the elevation of a lot of Americans of Indian descent or Indian Americans to high positions of power. That includes people like Vivek Ramaswamy. You have another person who could become the head of FBI. Of course, there is Sriram Krishnan, who is right now being positioned. There's already others like Nikki Haley, who refuses to acknowledge that she's Indian. But really, you're seeing a very particular kind of an Indian tech bro.
Right.
All of them apparently Tamil Brahmin, being elevated to positions of incredible power or access to power in the Trump presidency. So Laura Loomer really goes and starts this thing where she says, she berates the appointment of Krishnan. And after that, Vivek Ramaswamy jumps in and says how you really need these immigrants because American culture is the reason why we do not have skilled workers.
Mhm.
Again, Vivek Ramaswamy, as we all know, is an Indian American, a snake oil salesman, and somebody who made his money really just building out a Ponzi scheme. And this man lies for a living. Like everything he says, he's changed his position on immigration. He is anti-immigrant. He wants to, when running for president, he said that he is going to cancel access to birthright citizenship, while he himself is someone who got birthright citizenship. Cut the Department of Education. Just literally someone who was xenophobic, anti-racist, and a snake oil salesman. Somebody at this point in time shouldn't have any credibility.
Mhm.
Also, let's remember that he said that the insurrection was entrapment. I mean, I can go on and on and on about how this man is just the most vile person anybody should be listening to. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy's position was basically that Americans cannot produce skilled workers because American culture venerates the jock as against the hardworking nerd, and how H1B is something that we need to bring highly skilled people. This unleashed the MAGA folks who really don't like being told that they are not talented, they don't have the intelligence to do this kind of work. And then Elon Musk jumps in and says, no, H1B is great, we have to hold it. And really just started a civil war where not only did we see a lot of misinformation about H1B, what is, some people claim it's a system to bring highly skilled workers. Others claim it's basically indentured labor, where you're bringing not high skilled laborers, but people who could be brought on here to be paid much less. Of course, there's also the back and forth about the kind of racism that was unleashed,
Mhm.
a lot of anti immigrant, anti Indian racism.
Mhm.
And all of this has essentially made life for the average immigrant, especially brown, Arab, black, Muslim immigrants, harder because, immigration, anti immigrant sentiment is as
Yeah,
American as
yeah.
it is.
We all
So
end
I
up
just
in the
wanted to,
same box at the end of the day,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, absolutely. So that's
And
where
that
we
is
are. That's the Cliff Notes version of what happened. So,
Nice.
No, I mean, there is a lot to unpack here, but I do think that what I wanted to start off with is this idea of Bhakti. You said everyone is in the same box, right? We're all lumped in together, and I think the Indians who have historically immigrated to the U.S. Have striven since then to distinguish themselves from these other immigrants, right? And then we don't want to actually be lumped in with the Muslims, with the Bangladeshis, with the Arabs, with the Latin Americans. And so we have created and upheld the concept of the model minority. And very proudly we say, that we are the model minority. We are not those people, actually. We are not um, your unskilled Bangladeshi laborer, or your black laborer. We are skilled, meritorious people who have come into this country. And what discourse used to be very publicly framed as we are the model minority, we are exceptional among the Indian immigrant circles, is now being replaced, I saw in my research, with the word merit. Everywhere the word that is being used is merit. Oh, Sriram Krishnan, for example, has a podcast with his wife where he has talked about his support for removing the caps on green card countries. So, there's a cap on how many people from each country can get green cards per year. And India has a low cap with the highest number of green card applicants. And obviously, Mr. Tech Bro Sriram has said those caps should be removed. He's not wrong. But this has caused Laura Loomer to really jump in. And Sriram has been saying, well, these are meritorious people. And he has been backed by Trump and by Musk and by Ramaswamy, who are all saying, no, there is a distinction. There is the meritorious, hard, skilled worker. And in saying this, and how there should be a pathway to citizenship for them, unlike children of undocumented immigrants, and that there should be a fast track green card procedure for them, unlike everybody else who's languishing in the limbo. They are essentially reinforcing this idea of white America as inherently, meritorious, and something that all the rest of us have to strive to become a part of. And that this is the one way that we can do it. And that there are people in this box that don't actually belong there. And it is very much benefiting upper caste, wealthy, Indians to jump on this bandwagon who have always tried to assimilate through their white adjacency to claim, like, yes, we are actually like you, we're like you.
Yeah, yeah.
This is,
I just want to quickly point that the idea of the merit or the meritocracy or meritorious class actually is language from India's caste system, where upper castes regularly berate the use
there we
of
go.
reservation, saying that
Yeah.
the meritorious class, right? The meritorious class is really, and I think Professor Ajanta Subramaniam has a book that really kind of lays out this idea of what this meritorious class is. So another thing that I noticed also is that before there was a general, when I first migrated to this country, there was a general embrace of the idea, at least in the diaspora, of South Asian American. Then it became Desi, and then it became Indian American. And now, in a lot of these Twitter spaces, you're really seeing this as framed not as an issue that Indian Americans are facing, but as Hindu Americans are facing. They are basically framing this as, oh, the Hindus are being targeted, but realizing that Indians are not Hindu. Indians could be of all religions, all caste backgrounds, all experiences of migration. So, again, for me, it's very important for us to understand how the language of caste
Right.
has migrated to the diaspora in such an insidious way that now the framing becomes meritorious, but also we are looking at the idea of the H-1B as targeting Hindu Americans, which again is neither factually right, statistically right, but that's really where
Yeah.
the conversation is going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in when you gave your roundup, the Cliff Notes version of the MAGA saga, I think you forgot one important thing, which is Vivek Ramaswamy, who had rapped to Eminem's. He, he had sung along. Anyway, that's when I first kind of was like, "Who is this extremely embarrassing human being?" But anyway, aside, I think it's so important, this idea of unpacking this new merit language. And I think part of the problem, of course, look, between us, we know that the media covers migration badly, right? Liberal media does not cover migration well. They can't decide how to both sides this issue, right? They can't decide whether there should be equal rights for all migrants, or if there should be a cap on numbers, if there should be better border policies. It's like they cannot get past their basic prejudice around notions of borders and nation states and so on and so forth. So the media covers migration badly. That's a whole different thing. But the conundrum that India and Indian migrants present for us, who want to be extremely open when it comes to thinking about borders, visas, all these kinds of policies, it's sort of like, it's sort of really confounding to me, because I just cannot think of a group of migrants that are so utterly shameless in how they move within this particular circuit. And I remember, Madhuri, when we were talking about Kamala Harris and when she was standing for elections and all that, there was a whole group of Indian migrants, that are not the skill set, that actually come from various borders through precarious journeys over land across Iran and
Right.
all these places, truckers, like a totally different group of people that arrive that we would never even know, because the statistics are overwhelmed with the high success, high merit Indian American who is almost always Hindu, almost always with double, triple graduate degrees, and always upper caste, of course,
Yeah.
and vying to get into these tech positions primarily, or in multinational corporations, banks, and so on and so forth. So it's a very particular sort of thing. And I think, and then when we think about the model minority discourse, we're thinking about questions of obedience. How does the model
Right.
minority, engage with questions of assimilation, language? How do they present themselves in a hostile America, or so on? And Indians are also changing the kind of rules of engagement around that. And the ascendancy has been extraordinary. And I think the media, mainstream media, has really been completely blindsided by how intense and sudden the rise of so many Indian origin people has been in politics, in tech, in all these things. I mean, we are talking in UK, Rishi Sunak, Priti Patel, Suella Braverman. Then we're here, right here, we had Kamala Harris. She was vice president for 4 years, also standing as a nominee last year for president. And then we have this whole MAGA gang: Vivek Ramaswamy, Sriram Krishnan, Kash Patel, if he gets sworn in. It's a whole group of them, and it's wild. It is wild.
The thing, Bhakti, is I think I actually want to intervene and say I don't agree I don't agree when you say this, almost blindsided. I
Mhm.
think this is exactly what has been a work in progress. I remember
Mhm.
Stuart Hall, before passing away, when Obama's election had happened, and Stuart Hall was, I think he was already frail, but I think one of his last interviews, he talks about how this Obama's election, and this was, mind you, all of us were in euphoria. This was around 2008. It felt like something really had shifted, and we were all kind of taken in by this idea that, look, if we have a black man who's going
Yeah.
to, you know, and Stuart Hall, being Stuart Hall, I'm paraphrasing, said that, listen, let's kind of take a step back, because this might not be what all of us are. Yes, this is something that we should celebrate, but again, let's kind of, and he kind of predicts this. He says that this is going to be neoliberalism's unabashed conquest of everything.
Mm.
He really kind of talks about how this, again, maybe because in UK the idea of multiculturalism is different, but he actually
Yes.
kind of predicts
Mm.
that this is what's going to happen. Next time, the person who is going to put a boot on your neck is not going to look,
Right.
it is not going to be white.
Mm.
It is going to be the next prolific figure is going to look like Obama, speak like Obama, but is going to tell you that we are going to gut every protection and civil rights there is. So I
Yeah.
feel like some people knew, and I think the last 35 years has set us up for this moment. I think the media is not blindsided. I just think the media never wants to cover all of this. If they
Mm.
had, we wouldn't be where we are. So
Yeah.
that's just, yeah, I'm just
Absolutely. No,
thinking
no,
that.
no. You're totally right. You're totally right. I mean, I'm giving them too much credit by claiming that, they're blinded. Of course, their blinders are on, and they're willing, absolute willing blinders. And there's nothing more colonial and white than the media. Even if there are Indian reporters covering themselves, they will not bother to analyze their own group of people, right? So you're totally and absolutely right. I think what I'm trying to get at is that coverage of this has been so abysmal, so dismal, that now suddenly it's like, who are all these people? And here they are, and they're so powerful, and they have podcasts with millions of viewers and Twitter followers, and they're rapping, and they're standing for presidents, and I don't know who are they, even.
It's so weird because when you're talking about this, it occurs to me that they're presented as almost apolitical people. Like
Yes,
they're just completely like tech bros, and have our CEOs and our capitalists and venture capitalists, and it's almost like they're presented to you as completely apolitical, which is super bizarre.
I know.
At the same time, Suchitra, when you were speaking, I'm wondering what the media does with this like naked racism, which has driven this schism in the MAGA circles, right? So there is Trump and Elon Musk and David Sachs and Sriram Krishnan all on one side saying H1B is great. Elon Musk even tweeted something like, "I'm extremely pro-immigrant, being one myself," or something like that. Yeah, yeah,
From
yeah.
apartheid South Africa, like, yeah, of course,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Yeah,
Emerald
yeah.
Mines, of
But
course.
yeah.
apartheid, blah, 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 very pro-immigrant, gloss over. Okay. He says this. And then on the other side, you have someone like Laura Loomer, who is saying, I'm going to quote, okay? She tweeted, "Our country was built by white Europeans, actually, not third world invaders from India." Okay. She says this. And I was reading a New York Times report on what happened. And the New York Times, actually, when they were reporting on the feud, they say, quote, "In a post, Loomer said she was concerned that Mr. Krishnan, a naturalized US citizen who was born in India, would have influence on the Trump administration's immigration policies, and mentioned third world invaders. And mentioned third world invaders. Her quote exactly was, not third world invaders from India. She literally called Indians third world invaders. So I don't know, I'm seeing this like they're really struggling because they are so racist. They are not even able to call her a racist, at the same time. Like, it's just completely bizarre to me, this schism that's unfolding. So I think the media is in a bit of a tailspin because, like you said, the next person to have a boot on your neck is probably going to look like one of us, Mokamu says
Oh,
hell. At the same time, the media is like, I don't think I want you to do it. So they are really struggling with the fact. I don't know. It just feels like it's just
Yeah.
it's so dizzyingly weird, this whole,
yeah.
okay. She says,
So there's this one interview that Vivek Ramaswamy does with Ann Coulter around the time when he's still he's still a presidential, running the primary. And Anne says, "Oh my God, Vivek, like you are so smart. I agree with everything you say, but I will never vote for you because you're Indian." And Vivek Ramaswamy stood there saying nothing, smiling, and continues with the interview. So I'm trying to understand
Mhm.
in what world, and you're a billionaire, you went to Harvard and Yale, and you have and now you're running for president. You're talking about gutting birthright citizenship. You're talking about gutting everything. And then you're also talking about how you've never faced racism, and you're telling a black man that black people never faced racism. And then somebody is being racist towards you. She literally says, "You're so smart, you speak so well, I agree with you, but I will never vote for you because you are an Indian." And
Okay.
what was your response? You go on with the interview and you position yourself as someone who is so amazing that even racism
Hmm.
against you, this is not some mythical racism against your people, your community, not that
Right.
even that should not be okay. And yet you're okay with even that kind of racism towards you, and
Was
you
there
still
a
go on.
debrief, or was he asked why? What did he think when she said that? Nothing.
It's just the weirdest. Like, I'm sure, like, I
So
mean,
weird.
I think we should pull that video and as a part of this conversation, and that maybe
Definitely.
pull that exact clip where she says,
Yeah.
I too am a fan of yours. So I'm going to make a point of disagreeing with you so that it will be fun. You are so bright and articulate, and I guess I can call you articulate since you're not an American black. Can't say that about them. That's derogatory. And that was a great opening segment. Lots of things to talk about there. Oh, and I agreed with many things you said during. In fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
and why would you put up with that kind of racism? Isn't Forget the racism, the dehumanization. Like, this is literally somebody who is,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
And I just cannot trust people who look like us, who are supposed to represent us, kind of agree with.
Hmm.
This is a moment when, if there is racism that you witness, that all of us should be speaking up. Instead,
Yeah.
I cannot fathom.
I know.
I'm sure there are theories, there are people who understand how this works, but I cannot fathom
Yeah.
this
I'm
absolute.
I'm quite shocked to hear that. I had not heard of that at all. Of course, there is a general ethos or a sense of self, or an intellectual understanding that what Ann Coulter probably said makes sense to him. You know what I mean? This is how he
Yeah.
would think. I think it
Yeah.
probably makes sense to him. Of course, you're American and Americans are supposed to look a certain way. I won't vote for you because you're Indian. That makes sense. Let me tell
Yeah.
you why you should vote for me. Let me sell you. I think that's probably like the next thought. I mean, I'm just kind of
Okay,
speculating.
I I I get that, but you saying that, me listening to that, just it does all kinds of weird shit in my brain right now. Like,
Yeah,
it I that I cannot fathom, and I understand that he is that because
he is that.
this is someone who's taken a drug that has failed and brings it to market and makes billions of
I
dollars on the
know.
backs of people
Yeah,
who have. I mean, I understand this, but
yeah,
I still cannot make that bridge between
totally.
having all of. See, for me, wealth is always an act of protection. Wealth protects me from so much that otherwise I cannot. That's true of all of us, right? The
Hmm.
fact that we can speak English, the fact that There is certain material protection that all of us have, the privilege of caste. I see it as an armor. I see it as the capacity for me to say,
Yeah.
F you and walk away. That's what, for me, material and power and privilege is. Your capacity to walk away and challenge power.
Yeah.
And this is someone who has so much wealth
Yeah.
and yet refuses to challenge whiteness. And
Yeah.
that's where we are.
Yeah.
You know?
Though his that quote, that quote of his, it sounds like cultural studies 101. He says, our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence. Our American culture. I love it. Ramaswamy wrote in the Twitter X post, right? And he says, this is a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ, or the jock over the valedictorian. Will not produce the best engineers. I mean, it sounds like, wow, that's super interesting breakdown of like the American mainstream narrative. Of course, then it ends with will not produce the best engineers. And I'm just like, please, I have zero interest in this anymore. But it sounds like sounds like he's smart. So I'm so shocked to hear about the Ann Coulter thing. But I guess the bigger question for all of us to ponder is, how did we get here? Like, what is it with the history of Indian migration that takes us to this place? And who are the victims of this? There is severe collateral damage when the migrant discourse is framed like that, when people who look like us frame it like that. I mean, there's severe collateral damage even from Kamala Harris's campaign for presidency, where she wanted to be so harsh on the border and said the worst things, the most endemically racist stuff came out of her mouth. And what then? What are we doing with the H-1B visas? And how did we get here? And I think one of the things that's interesting, of course, is the extent to which I think the Indian migration is so, I think, very particular. The World Economic Forum, for example, reports that India has the largest diaspora in the world, and it's 18 million of its citizens live in other countries, with the US as their top destination. They also, there's also a lot of research and thinking around the fact that when it comes to Indian migrants to the US, it's always these narratives of extraordinary success, or you might want to call it merit, that tend to proliferate. Household incomes, access to higher ed, rates of employment are much higher than Americans. And of course, I think we know why that is because the class that manages to migrate, the class of people that manages to migrate, is already so privileged within India itself. Caste privilege, class privilege, education privilege, skin privilege, name it, and you have it, right? And, so basically at this point, and these are numbers from 2022, the number of migrants from India to the US stand at 2.7 million, and which is a sharp spike from what was only 200,000 in 1980. And basically it seems, it's a really crazy spike. And Indians, they say, are most likely to have arrived since 2000. And the largest share, about 44% of Indians, arrived in 2010 or later, compared to 28% of the overall foreign-born population. I think this was in The Economist. And of course, I always like to, when I see that number, I always think, okay, I see how the Hindu Indian diaspora, the rise of Modi, and the ascendancy in the US, totally, there's a total thread through all of that, right? So it is a very particular story. It is a very interesting, particular story, and it's a story of proximity to power at any cost at the end of the day.
I mean, to me, it feels like the post 2010. I did not expect that the vast majority of Indian immigrants came after 2010 because of how increasingly difficult it has been, or the country has made it, to get in and stay here. So I'd be interested to know like the breakdown, or to know what kind of visas they come in on. And my suspicion is obviously the bulk of them are H-1B.
Yeah.
And obviously because America has, every time they, quote, open their borders to certain immigrants, they assign a value on what they can bring into the country. And with this emphasis on tech They have brought in, it is true that majority of the people who work in tech on an H-1B visa are actually not making that much money. I'm not sure of the exact statistic, but I read that only, 2.5% of immigrants on the H-1B visa make more than $200,000 a year. So the truth is, there are very skilled immigrants coming in to do work that is definitely being paid below market. Like no American would accept that kind of salary. For sure, it goes a long way back home, etc., etc. But the truth is that they are actually not necessarily taking American jobs, but they're working for a wage that is not fair. And that blew my mind, because the H-1B visa is an actually expensive visa to get. It's, it is a notoriously difficult visa to obtain. It has to be employee sponsored. It costs money. It's a lottery. You have to jump through an insane number of hoops. So clearly, and also we know that it's Amazon, Google, Tesla. These are the companies that have that issue and obtain most of the H-1B visas. And so obviously for them, it's like a sunk cost. The cost of getting cheap labor far outweighs, is more profitable to them than whatever spending the money on the H-1B visa. In other words, they would rather spend money getting these visas than hire American labor.
Right.
That is just the fact of the issue. And with all these hoops, I was surprised to hear this, because even personally, like, I've been in the H-1B lottery. My husband has been in the H-1B lottery. It took us forever to get. We lost it once, and it's really, really punitive. So it just feels to me like the whole discourse is just so misguided, and who we are letting in, people that value money, people that want this proximity to power. Like you said, there's a Modi Hindu pipeline, which is amplified by class. And so you are letting in people who venerate that kind of power, who hold that kind of power back home, and who will, as you said, obey. They will obey, because they want to be brought in as these skilled, already white adjacent people. Like, you're just siphoned right into the upper echelons of power. And you see this even when you look at, like, the American treatment of refugees, right? So when Ukrainian refugees who are white were coming into the US, they have essentially just gone on to have what in my mind is, and I mean this very gently, the best refugee experience that people could have. They have families adopting them. They get sent to, children are getting sent to, Ukrainian refugee children are going to private schools with tuition fully paid, whereas you think America is opening its borders to bring in Palestinian refugees, and this all happened at the cost of Afghan refugees, and blah blah blah. So they are the new, like, tech bros are the new white bros. That's just it,
Yeah.
Wow.
Also, I know we use the language of skilled and unskilled. I think even folks like us should begin to really figure out ways to not use that language, because again, when we say skilled, what does it mean? Like, everybody is skilled. Like, there are migrants who come in and who can build houses. That is an important skill.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a tech bro, but but my skills as a writer will not be valued as I mean, I will not be considered skilled in this discourse, right? So I think this language of skilled and unskilled migrants also feeds into this idea of good immigrant and bad immigrant, good Muslim and and bad Muslim. And even when, I think, almost 15 years ago, there is a clip, I was seeing it yesterday, where Bernie Sanders was saying that 15 years, not 15 years, maybe a decade ago, I'm getting the timelines wrong, but at least a decade ago, there is a interview where Bernie Sanders says that H-1B visas are disproportionately being exploited by the silicon and tech industry, including Bill Gates's lobbying for a very specific kind of tech worker, while these visas can be used to bring in teachers and other professionals that America doesn't only need engineers, it needs teachers, it needs nurses, it needs all kinds of people to come. And this looks like, I was looking at this interview and I felt, oh, why is Bernie saying this now? And then it looks like this was something that he had done a decade ago. So again, what is it that we are valuing? Like, we don't seem to value someone like teachers.
Yeah.
We don't seem, again, it kind of goes back to someone like Vivek Ramaswamy saying that, oh, we need to venerate the nerd over the jock, but you also want to cut the Department of Education.
I know.
How are we going to create nerds or empower nerds when there are no teachers? But also, this division between the jock and the nerd is such.
It's hogwash. It's completely fabricated.
Yeah.
It's idiotic beyond
And
belief.
it's so masculine. It's just so toxically masculine, right? Jock
So-
versus nerd. Like,
And I think I'm saying this as something that I fail as well, because I wrote a book about borders. I have written about open borders, the need to abolish borders. And then yet, when speaking in America, we all get forced into using the language of hegemony, where I really don't think there is a difference between somebody who can pick apples, build things, teach things, nurse, can take care of people, can code, can do. I mean, also, what is this thing that if you're a good immigrant, somehow, again, the framing of DACA under Obama, like, you have to be so brilliant and go to Harvard for you to have a decent life? Like, no. You're a human being. You deserve the basic protections and dignity simply because you're human and you exist. Right? So I think this is something that I'm struggling with too. And I don't think I do a good job of articulating these things when we have these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me also of my pet peeve of a human being, not in tech, but is Lin Manuel Miranda, who, remember, he had that slogan, migrants get the job done. And it's like, you know what? Bring the migrants that are losers and drunks, and I'm all for it. It's just like, what is this? This idea of this hardworking person who shoulders everything, skill or unskill, that's not what he's talking about. He's just talking about like the sincere, extremely honest worker who keeps the country going, who takes the nation state to its next high capitalist level. I mean, it is so bad. I mean, just generally the discourse on migrants is so bad, and I think we're going to need like a totally different episode to cover that. But I actually am really curious, how does this MAGA saga resolve? Like, this is like a snake biting its own tail. It's like Elon Musk is like, no, I like H1B. Vivek is like, I like it too, but it's been a bit lax. Trump is like, no, I love H1B, but I'm going to cut some. Steve Bannon is like, we're going to come for you. What's happening? And who is going to be the collateral damage, as I keep saying in this episode? How does this move along? What happens now?
can I just
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
in? Sorry.
Yeah, go,
I
Madhuri.
want to jump in with like a humorous, how this was humorously resolved was on Twitter between Laura Loomer and Elon Musk. Eventually, she basically, her premium features were discontinued by Musk because he owns X. So she was forced into a conversation
Yeah.
with this Twitter handle that is widely known to be Musk's alter ego. Like, it's Musk's handle. Musk is handling it. It's his burner account. So she ends up tweeting, I had a very productive account, and with the burner account, with Musk's burner account, we had a really productive conversation. And I would really love if, at Elon Musk would reinstate my premium privileges or whatever. So if you want to know how it would resolve, that would probably be it. I think that's like, shows to me that, the one thing you can be sure of when it comes to people in power and is that their solidarity is always going to be with the money. So sure, you have these like white warriors, and I've even read of Laura Loomer being called an anti-Islam activist. They like yeah. So she's like, or you can be all of these things, but when it comes to money and the people that make us the money and the people that make us rich, that's always going to prevail. So there is a schism, because like the Laura Loomers are saying, it's America first, it's white people. This is MAGA agenda is being America first. And, you have Elon Musk, who basically has bought his way into the cabinet and he just wants to become a gazillionaire. True. But Trump solidarity, Musk solidarity, and everyone, Bannon can say whatever he wants, but I think It's all going to be about the monies. That's my prediction on how this will resolve. There will be H-1B. They will come at the expense of every other non-caste privileged brown immigrant. Those are the people who are going to be collateral damage, Bhakti, to answer your question. And yeah, that's how I think it will be. It will be some people getting richer and richer on the backs of everyone else, as it has always been.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Can't wait. Love it.
Yeah.
You know, as you know, Joe Sacco, my absolute favorite, greatest political cartoonist, says, peace won't pay the rent. You know what? Having revolution and, human rights for all won't make podcast episodes for us. So off we go, We'll have nothing to talk about if these things straighten out.
I would
Go ahead,
love that.
Suchitra.
But
I would love that too. I would love that
But
too.
Bhakti, why are we doing this? We are doing this because this podcast started as a catharsis, like literally like
I
being
know.
gaslit every single day. Uh,
Totally.
So again, I would like to have nice long vacations where I am just reading Eat, Pray, Love. I would actually like to not have my hair go prematurely white. I would like to actually spend an entire day just doing things I want. The
Mhm.
thing with all of this is that this it's the thing with I think it's Toni Morrison who said that thing with racism is that once they have called you racist, you spend the rest of your time trying to prove
Yeah.
them that
Yeah.
you're not when they call you like incompetent or something, that there is no, you spend the rest of your energy trying to prove. And in some ways that's exactly what we are expending our energy fighting these battles that otherwise have gone towards doing something else. We are not building something beautiful. We are literally fighting for things to not be broken down. So,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, maybe the goal is to have this podcast one day dismantled. That there will
Yeah.
be one day no need for this podcast, and then we've
That
actually achieved our
that would
goal.
be
We literally
beautiful.
just talk about fashion and celebrities and like art and architecture and
This is what the genocide has taken from me, the inability to engage with that stuff. It's just, this is what this last year has done to me, is the absolute inability to just be light and relax. And it's a big price actually at the end of the day, because it inflects every part of my privileged life and I can't engage anymore. And so I'm just like fundamentally isolated, and then of course I get to be with you both, and then I'm not as isolated, but you know what I mean. We're all feeling that in
for
some way.
sure.
But yes, I love that end goal is no need for this podcast, and everybody just chill and wear nice clothes and sip wine or whatever.
Yes, that is my fervent goal too. But unfortunately, we are going to be living in a time, in a year, when we are going to be continually gaslit, and this time by the people who look and sound exactly like us. So I think there's even more of a need, unfortunately, for us and this podcast. And remember, we will always be here, much as we don't want to remind you when you think you are going crazy, it's not you, it's the media.